And so they can't trust the Bible's promise for their destiny if they can't trust the Bible's history for its accuracy.
Well stated. Very well stated. So, the first question, what are you doing with all these dinosaurs?
Well, I was riding down the road one day, and I was talking to my son, Thomas, and I said, you know, we need to get a dinosaur. It's in the middle 90s. And so we went to a colleague of ours, Joe Taylor, and I worked out a program with him to gather up some of his dinosaurs. And we went to Florida and to Arizona and to Albuquerque and set up programs. And in 2.5 months, using the dinosaur icon, we spoke to more people in 2.5 months than we had spoken to in 2 years.
So people are interested in now this audience is interested in these dinosaurs. So, yes. Dr. Thomas Sharp, we need to know who these guys are.
Yes, sir.
Can you, we're standing beside this special fellow right here.
Yes.
Who is this guy?
Well, for years they thought this was probably a juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex. But because of continuous study and more evidence, which is a unique thing we need to talk about after a while, they've found that this is probably a tyrannosaur, but it's a species of tyrannosaur called Albertosaurus. Albertosaurus simply means Alberta lizard. It was originally found in Alberta, province of Canada.
Yes.
This particular guy was found in Choteau, Montana in 1999. It took about 4 or 5 months to excavate the fossil out of the ground. It was about 55–56% complete. And of course, the balance of the fossil is a composite of other Albertosaurs.
But with full justification.
Oh, yes.
This audience should know that to find a 25% complete dinosaur is incredibly rare.
Yes, sir.
So to find this one 56% complete means that the musculature and the entire physiology of the dinosaur can be placed with scientific precision.
Yes.
So what else can you, this was a theropod.
Yes, it was. And one of the things that I love to talk about when I'm with students, and I probably speak to 30,000 to 40,000 students a year.
All right.
In school settings, is that I like to show them the arm of a tyrannosaur. The thing that I like to say about this arm is that God has an amazing sense of humor. It was interesting to me that Jack Horner said about the T-Rex. He said, we really don't understand this little puny front arm on the T-Rex because, you know, Henry Fairfield Osborn, who was the president of the American Museum from about 1905 to about 1927, along in there, he's the guy that developed the name for Tyrannosaurus Rex. But he did it on the strength of just a few bits and pieces of fossil material. A few teeth, a little bit of jaw, some vertebrae.
Tyrant lizard.
Yeah, tyrant lizard king, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yes.
He thought these large teeth and these giant jaws meant that we've got the meanest guy that's ever lived. And so they're running into incredible problems. Now, what people need to understand is that we are not completely aware of all the information within the dinosaur study context.
Correct.
Science, and I love to tell students in the mean definition of science, science is an empirical investigation, a sensory investigation of data in cause-effect relationships that can be observed,
and the assimilation of that data,
tested,
yes,
and repeated, and then possibly falsified. The falsification of empirical theory, hypothesis, makes the scientific process work, and it accommodates itself to human finiteness. We don't know all there is to know about anything. And so within science, we never know how much we do know in relationship to what we don't know. We never know what we may find out tomorrow to change what we thought we knew. So scientifically, we never know much. So we're always discovering more. The thing
this is an illustration of that.
You see, what Osborn didn't tell us, and what we didn't understand for a long time, is they never found a fossil T-Rex with the front arms attached until 1988. We're talking, he named the guy in 1905 Tyrannosaurus Rex. And then one day we found enough of this guy to find the front arms. And I mean, what are you going to do? Would you hold this a minute?
Yes.
What are you going to do if you're going to go out on Saturday night and beat everybody up, you're the meanest guy that ever lived, and you've got this problem right here. I mean, how are you going to hit? I mean, I'm going to knock you out.
A sense of humor,
an
like
amazing sense of humor. So Horner says, I don't know what they did with this except maybe scratch their belly after they ate. Of course, Horner introduced another problem, because once we see the problem with the front arm, we also realize it's got a locomotion problem. I never will forget being called by a radio station one time after Jurassic Park had been viewed, and they said, would you do an interview and an expose on Jurassic Park? I said, be happy to, but I need to go see the movie. Well, I don't get to see movies often, so...
While you're describing this, Dr. Sharp, let's move and contrast this with another dinosaur. Sure. While you're describing this.
And so while I was watching this movie, of course, the Spielberg special effects just got my attention overwhelmingly, and I had to stay, you know, somewhat in shell shock because of all this stuff. You know, before too long, the raptors were jumping out behind the aisles, scaring me to death.
Marvelous.
I had to go back and watch it the second time to get over the shock effect. Then I read Crichton's book, and one of the things that they had trouble with there was they said this guy was the most terrible, predacious predator that ever lived. Well, when we found this front arm, and there was no justification for that, we also discovered that its locomotion wasn't probably like they thought. It wasn't running 45 miles an hour. A Stanford University professor, a biochemist, researched that, and he came to the conclusion that these T-Rexes could probably only run about 11, 12 miles an hour top end, and it probably waddled kind of like a duck.
That solves some major problems.
And then at the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh, they have a dinosaur on display since 1990 that has the eyes incredibly peripheral. So rather than having stereoscopic vision like a hawk or a human, they're saying, wow, this means maybe this animal had eyes similar to a cow, and maybe even like a chameleon. Maybe the eyes worked independent of each other. So it's not the kind of visionary equipment you would expect for the best predator alive. So we got eye problems, we got leg problems, we got front arm problems, and we've got dentation problems. Lambie.
Let's go back to the creature so you can illustrate this. And time's getting away from us. We're having so much fun. Continue rapidly, please.
Okay, so the Lambie said, well, these teeth are falling out and growing back. We have a copy of Stan in a museum over at Eureka Springs, and Stan is considered to be a very mature T-Rex. But there are places in Stan's jaws where the teeth have fallen out and little bitty teeth are growing back, fossilized in this animal. That's incredible, Dr. Ball. It indicates to us that these guys are losing their teeth and replacing them all the time.
Which means?
Which means that they didn't have the dentation we thought they had. They probably weren't bone crunchers. And so Horner and others are saying maybe these guys were scavengers.
In fact, let's show the audience. This family of supposed predators really has the largest olfactory cavity, nasal cavity, exposing to scavenging material from a great distance away that might need to be cleaned up. So the conclusion now among many evolutionary paleontologists is, as you know, that these were primarily, maybe predominantly and maybe exclusively, but primarily they were scavengers rather than being predators.
Matter of fact, the olfactory lobe in the brain of Stan is the largest developed part of that whole organ, indicating that it was a very, very good smeller. It could detect things by odor much better than other kinds of animals. And so the indication is, the more evidence we see, our views are changing. What I'm trying to tell children is that the evidence isn't all in on these guys. As a matter of fact, in 2004, National Geographic did this gigantic interview of about 16 different professionals in the dinosaur world and came to the conclusion we know less about them than we know.
We know less about them than we know.
Right.
Now, while we only have a few moments left in the program, as I often say, time flies when you're having fun.
Yes.
We've only gotten to one of your dinosaurs.
I know that.
Now, these have been used. I have an illustration that I use regularly of the Tower of Time. This is a professional documentation of the theory of evolution. And the dinosaurs are really the icon. They're the central structure of the evolutionary model.